It's interesting because I'm shocked, but also not shocked about how there's such an inversion of reality. So you have Hezbollah and Nasralla presented as a sectarian, religious fundamentalist terrorist, and Israel is the pluralistic, surgical strike implementing, respect human life, and the Hezbollah has no value for human life. This is the narrative, right? They don't value life. It's a culture of death, and Israel is a culture of life. And I mean, you see the exact opposite. I mean, if you look at the civilian counts from Hezbollah versus the IDF, there's no question about who killed more.
And I think during this war itself, you can clearly see, you can discern a pattern. Hezbollah avoided as much as they could going after civilians. The Israelis go out of their way to kill civilians.
Exactly.
That has been the norm throughout the Arab-Israeli conflict. And one time I heard a story from Nasrallah himself. He said, you can believe him or disbelieve him, because there were civilians who were killed by Hezbollah over the years, especially in the early period. But he said to me, in the 1990s, they were trying to assassinate one of the leader of the terrorist militias established by Israel called the South Lebanon Army. And he said they were going to bomb the house of the man. But when they learned that his family was there, that they postponed the operation for another time because of that. As far as sectarianism, no, the movement is sectarian by virtue of its ideology related to Shiite and drawing on Shiite tradition, and also by virtue of the membership, which is largely Shiite in composition. I mean, it's not a secular organization,
Sure.
That's a fact. I mean, Lebanon, all organizations and parties are largely sectarian, with the exception of the secular groups like the Syrian Social National Party or the Lebanese Communist Party.
But they don't have, they're more tolerant of people who are, I mean, in many ways, they're more tolerant of religious minorities.
Or they change.
Yeah.
That's Nasrallah's change.
Okay.
Early on, the party, I mean, this is where I used to be very critical of the party in articles and so on. Early on in the 1980s, the rhetoric was very offensive to my ears, at least.
Sure.
They were anti-Jewish, anti-Christian. They wanted to establish an Islamic republic. That's what Nasrallah did. He changed the party. He changed its ideology. He changed the way it's managed. He changed the way it conducts military operations. All that was done under his leadership. Having said that, I also have to say, it is likely that we will encounter a different Hezbollah and a different Hamas in years to come. Make no mistake about it. The tens of thousands killed over the last year will carry with them wars of revenge that will span many years and will not spare not spare the West by virtue of blatant Western complicity in the war of genocide in Palestine and the war of aggression in Lebanon. It is an unfortunate message that I bring, but I think it is logical. I mean, look at tens of thousands killed. Do you know how many people want to seek revenge against Israel, who lost their entire family, who lost their parents, lost their children? This is definitely going to have an impact. That's what Israel always assumes. They assume the only language Arabs understand is the language of force. We just have to kill them. But Hannah Arendt in early 1950s warned them in an article in Journal of Politics that if there is one lesson thus far in the Arab-Israeli question, it is that notwithstanding Israeli wishful thinking, the language that Arabs do not understand is the language of force. The
Hannah
notion
Arendt
that
said this, you said?
Hannah Arendt said that, yes, in early 1950s. And she was a Zionist, and she worked in a Zionist organization, but she was appalled by the way Israel was using force indiscriminately against Arabs.
How short-sighted can you be to not understand that this is going to create desire for revenge? I mean, it's just human nature.
Katie, Israel could have easily achieved a two-state solution with Arafat. Arafat was a very popular movement. He really could have delivered the Palestinian consent to a two-state arrangement, which he asked for, which is largely it's like 22% of Palestine, and which I think is too little. I think it is totally unjust. But he was willing to do that. And I remember in 1991, I spoke at a synagogue in Lynchburg, Virginia, of all places. I was teaching at the women's college there. And I told the audience that, at that time, it shows you Israel does not want to have peace or coexist with the native population. It wants to either exterminate them or kick them all out. Kick them all out. Israel wants to create a neighborhood in which there are thousands of miles of uninhabited land in order to be safe in that neighborhood. That's what it does.
I guess it's based on the racism, right? Because if they see them as
Totally,
human animals, then they don't have to
totally,
worry about looking at human nature. Um,
totally.
because how could you not see that?
I call on people, especially Zionists, if anybody is listening to this broadcast, to go and trace the writings of Ahad Ha'am. That's his pen name. He was a famous writer in Hebrew, and he revolutionized the writing of prose in Hebrew and so on. Ahad Ha'am was a leader of what was known as cultural Zionism. He visited the Holy Land at the turn of the century, late 1990s, and he came back appalled of how they treat the population. You can Google him and Google my Angry Arab website. I produced what he wrote, and he spoke about, we think of them as animals and we treat them, we hit them for no reason. They were abusing the native population in the 1890s. So imagine when they had available to them all this military technology.
Right.
This is what Nazi like about Israel today. They use military technology to kill the largest numbers of Arabs. You can flatten a building with smaller bombs, but it doesn't suffice. They want to cause more death and destruction because their method is to terrorize them. This is what Menachem Begin said in his book, The Revolt. Deir Yassin was enough to send a message to terrorize the population so that they can flee for their lives.
What motivates the West to support Israel as unquestioningly as it does?
Early on, I believe, was anti Semitism. Western enthusiasm for the Zionist project was an idea that we can get rid of our Jewish population by sending them over there. And they were very clear about it. Zionists were clear about it, and Western governments were clear about it. And in fact, Theodor Herzl, in his writings, said that this will free anti-Semitic West from its Jewish population. The second one, on the part of people in the West, there was clearly understandable, genuine sympathy for the victims of the Holocaust. But they wrongly assumed that the state of Israel is the embodiment of the survivors of the Holocaust, which is totally unfair to Jewish people around the world. This is a state just like any other state. Israel should be seen as representative of Jewish people as much as Iran is representative of Muslim people or Saudi Arabia is of Muslim people. They represent political interest in the name of the state of Israel or the Iranian Republic or whatever it is. So, but they had that view that if we lend support to the state, we will be showing sympathy for the victims of the Holocaust and the survivors. Thirdly, there was guilt on the part of many Western governments because they did not lift a finger to help the Jewish population when they could. When they could. FDR was given plans in order to bomb the rail tracks in order to stop these train of death transferring Jews to their death in concentration camps. And he did nothing. Even refugees, they allowed, like in 1944, something like 3,000 or 4,000, but yet they supported unlimited Jewish immigration in the land of Palestine because it was somebody else's land.
Right.
That was easy for them. And
if they felt really guilty, they would have increased the immigration to their own countries.
absolutely. And fourthly, they supported Israel because of their contempt for the Arab population. And they believe this is a country led by white Europeans like us, because, of course, Westerners never pay attention to non-European Jews, which is
Right.
like half of the population. They were never there. And, of course, European Jews never allow them to rise up in the government. All of the people we talk about are Europeans or American and so on. So they view them as people who are worthy to subjugate the Arab of the Middle East on behalf of the Western colonial project. And fifthly, by supporting Israel, the United States relied on Israel in order to do dirty work that America may not want it to do publicly and so on, like being involved in civil wars and crushing of rebellions and so on. I cannot name you a conflict in my lifetime in the Middle East in which Israel was not directly involved. The Lebanese civil war in 1958, Israel armed and financed, and always the worst group in the fight. They financed and armed the fascistic Lebanese Phalange Party. In 1975, they armed and financed the fascistic militias of Lebanese forces and the Phalange. In the war in the Sudan, Israel was on the side of the South Sudanese army and was later serving as a midwife for the creation of the terrorist criminal state of South Sudan. If you think about the Kurdish rebellion, the Israeli government was directly involved. They were involved in September of 1970 in Jordan against the Palestinian movement. They were involved in Morocco by arming and consulting and advising and killing on behalf of the Moroccan dictatorship. I mean, they were directly involved in the murder of the socialist opposition leader Mahdi Ben Baraka in 1966. They assisted Gulf government over the years in killing their own dissidents and crushing their own rebellions. In 1970s in Oman, there was a socialist revolutionary movement in Zufar province of Oman. The Israeli government was directly involved on the side of the Sultan of Oman. I mean, I can name so many cases. Look at Bahrain in the rebellion. The government of Israel was on the side. Today, they're assisting Saudi Arabia and United Emirates in the surveillance system, in spying and killing people who are dissidents and so on. So the list is very long. In the war in Syria over the last so many years, Israel was certainly directly involved.